Hello, thanks for tuning in. It's Stuart, the Unrepentant Atheist here. I'm going to be reviewing the discussion that went on between Alex O'Connor and John Lennox. John Lennox, who is a professor of mathematics at Oxford University. I'm not sure whether he's retired, but we've seen him in the past debating people like Christopher Hitchens. So obviously he's a Christian, and he was in Oxford, at Oxford University, discussing the existence of God with Alex O'Connor and making the claim that in fact science needs God. Okay, so let's just go through some of the points that were made and I'll respond to them. Most of the talking was actually done by John Lennox. I would say that Alex was only talking for 10% of the time, and I was a little bit disappointed that Alex allowed John Lennox to go making points without really challenging him. That was a bit disappointing. Having said that, Alex did make some good points, but I would like to have seen him effectively challenge John Lennox a bit more, because I did not think that he presented a single good point argument in favour of the existence of God. Now, to be fair, let's just look at John Lennox, his background. He grew up in Northern Ireland in a very sectarian society where we've got Catholics against Protestants, and it would be difficult to find somebody who wasn't a Christian in the times when he was growing up. He did say that although his parents were Christians, they encouraged him to think outside of the box and to explore other worldviews. He mentioned that they provided him with the Communist Manifesto, and as an example of a worldview that wasn't theistic. So that's obviously to be commended. However, one couldn't really do anything but conclude that if you grew up in Northern Ireland with Christian parents in a really strongly Christian society, and then you went to two very Christian cities. One is Cambridge. I mean, if you go to Cambridge University, religion is everywhere, in the sense that all of the chapels, all of the religious services which are going on, etc., and of course Oxford University. So he's kind of lived in a bit of a bubble, I suppose, and maybe he hasn't really encountered sufficient in his earlier days. Maybe he didn't encounter enough opposition to his way of thinking, or maybe he did, and he just simply decided that there was a God, and that he would seek confirmation of that. Now, I say that because he admitted that he came first to God through personal experience, and then later on sought intellectual justification for that, and him and Alex both agreed that this is normally how it is with people. He did cite one exception to that, which was Antony Flew, who, what was he? He was a philosopher, and he was an atheist, and near the end of his life he became a deist. And according to John Lennox, I haven't had any confirmation of this because I'm not sure, and I'm not really sure whether to trust John Lennox's words, because he said one or two things which I doubted that they would be true. One of the claims he made about Richard Dawkins I thought probably wasn't true, so I'm not too sure. But he said that Antony Flew converted because he did not think that DNA could have come about by purely natural means. He thought it was evidence of a designer, of design, that it was like a code or a language, and it was just simply too complex to have occurred naturally. This was his reason, and he also went on to claim, Lennox went on to claim, that Antony Flew also rejected Hume's dismissal of miracles, which I found surprising, because if he's a deist, then he wouldn't necessarily, miracles wouldn't really be a big deal for him. So I was a bit surprised about that, and I wonder whether what Lennox said about Antony Flew was entirely accurate. Somehow I doubt it. But let's just move on to some of the reasoning. Yeah, coming back to DNA, and DNA, which Lennox has decided that it could not have come about by purely natural means. He said that it's a code, it's a language, and that it's just simply too complex to believe that it could have come about by purely natural means. Now, I've listened to various biologists and scientists on this subject. From what I understand, life had very simple beginnings. There was no DNA with very early organic life, and that by incremental steps over millions and millions of years it developed. It wasn't something that was suddenly there in the way that Lennox talks about it. It's like it arrived, complete and fully developed, and from what I understand, that wasn't the case. However, of course, Lennox said God could do it however he wants. So if God wanted it to look like DNA had developed by millions of incremental steps over hundreds of millions of years, he could do that. I mean, it's like, he's put God in a no-win, in a unassailable position, because whatever you say, he can say, oh, well, God could have made it like that. If we say, well, evolution's debunked God, there was no creator, we've seen how life developed, and if we eventually managed to show exactly how abiogenesis happened, he could turn around and say, oh, well, God knew that you'd be looking, and that's how he arranged it. Yeah, God did all that as well. That's the mechanics of God, which is actually fair enough. It's a fair point, and that's why I never refer to the theory of evolution or abiogenesis or anything like that. If I'm making a case for atheism, I never rule out God on that basis, because it may well be the case that God made everything exactly as it is, and just knowing that humans would eventually discover this and think themselves really clever that they'd worked out would be another test of faith. How many of the faithful can stay in the fold despite all of these scientific discoveries? So yeah, absolutely. But neither do I think that's a good reason to believe in the existence of God. So, okay. So he came to this, he's a mathematician, and he talked about the way that existence could be codified. It could be represented as information mathematically. And he said that the Bible pointed to this knowledge that we live in what he calls an information universe, that it could be represented as information, as mathematics, or as language. In the beginning was the Word, John 1:1. He is arguing that this is an indication that they knew exactly what the nature of the universe is, and that somehow this is a good argument for the existence of God. Alex countered that by saying, well, the Word is really just a metaphor for God, isn't it? So, well, yeah, absolutely. And this is what I call, what would we say, retrospectively looking at the evidence. So, with all the scientific discoveries we've got with mathematics, we can do these things. Yeah, we can represent reality as Einstein did with the theory of relativity and everything, and Newton before him with gravity. Yeah, we can represent all these things, the forces of nature, mathematically. That doesn't necessarily follow that we live in an information universe, and that in the beginning was the Word means that the writer of John was divinely inspired, because that's the nature of reality, that everything can be reduced to information. I don't really think that argument follows. To me, it's exactly the same as Muslims claiming that because there is a surah in the Quran saying that Allah is the expander of the universe, it shows that they knew the universe is expanding, and hallelujah, or whatever the equivalent term in Islam is. It means that Islam must be true, because nobody could have known that in those days, that the universe was expanding. So it's exactly the same argument. Now, both Christianity and Islam can't be true. If one's true, the other is false. So I don't accept these arguments which take a scientific discovery and then look back at the Bible or the Quran and try to find something that matches up with it. That retrofitting the evidence, I think is what they call it. No, I don't accept that. I don't find it impressive at all, frankly. Okay, but we've got to bear in mind all the time, of course, that as Lennox said, it was a personal experience that brought him to God. Well, it kind of was, but I mean, let's face it, he grew up in a Christian society with Christian parents, so he was ripe for some kind of experience which, with all his confirmation bias, would lead him to believe that actually the cause of that personal experience was the Christian God. I mean, obviously, that tends to be how it works. Okay, so let's see. Let me just go through some of the other points that were made. Yeah, so he said this thing that so many Christians have said, human beings can't make a bird. I mean, how many Christians have you heard say, you know, we can't make animals, we can't make trees, we can't do this, we can't do that. And Alex said something quite interesting. He said, well, actually, maybe we can. If we had enough time, and if we had all the technology in place, maybe we could make a bird. Maybe if we had several 100 million years ahead to start a project and try and make abiogenesis happen in the lab, and we could do that experiment over millions of years, maybe we could make a bird. Maybe we could. But even if we can't, it doesn't matter. It's the process of nature, as far as we know, that makes animals. Nature has got the time, it's got the resources, it's got everything that we haven't really got. It's not our business to do things. Of course, he will say that it's God's business to do these things, but we haven't really got evidence of that. And he claims that his is not the God of the gaps. That's what he says. He said it's the best explanation which fits the facts. So it's not the God of the gaps. But no, actually, it is the God of the gaps, because we don't know, for example, how life got started. And he's proposing a solution to that there was a God who did it all, who coded DNA, etc. So because we don't know how DNA developed exactly, or how abiogenesis happened, we just say, atheists like me, we say, well, we don't know, let's wait for more information. No, John Lennox says God did it. That is God of the gaps, I mean, by definition. He said something about Richard Dawkins, which I think is not true. He said in The Blind Watchmaker, Dawkins says that evolution is responsible for life. I mean, life right from the very beginning. And he said that's not true, because that's not abiogenesis. And he claims that, of course, God started life off, and then he could have let it go or whatever. I'm sure that Richard Dawkins knows exactly what abiogenesis is. I've seen him on the Piers Morgan show when Piers Morgan said, where did life come from? What did it come out of? And Dawkins said, we don't know. So he does absolutely know. If it was evolution, he would have said, yeah, evolution did it. He's not a fool. Of course evolution didn't do it. Evolution is what happened after life got going. So that's why I kind of distrust John Lennox after he said that. You know, I've seen a lot of people online saying, oh, Richard Dawkins, he was wrong about this, wrong about that, and he's made this claim and that claim. It's like, if Richard Dawkins is wrong about something, then somehow it bolsters the case for the existence of God, which it doesn't. Even if Richard Dawkins was, you know, a complete fool in virtually everything he says, it wouldn't make any difference. Okay, and then he made the point, John Lennox made the point that science has come out of Christianity. Yes, so yeah, science has come out of Christianity, and that says a lot about the credibility for the existence of God. And Alex quite rightly pointed out that actually before Christianity, the Islamic world was ahead in science, in mathematics. They developed the alphabet, etc. And yeah, good point. So I suppose Islam must be true, right? Because Islam for several hundred years was way ahead of the Christian world. Then there's the point John Lennox made, well, okay, but the Chinese never had science, and they're a non-theistic world. Science developed in the theistic world, not the non-theistic world. All right, well, there are probably reasons for that. There are probably some very good reasons, and it would be the subject for a book. But I don't accept that as evidence that there's a God. There was such a thing as scholastic philosophy. Education was in the hands of Christians, and they wanted to defend their faith. Out of that grew thinking, and obviously they branched out and introduced other subjects. And eventually we had science. I mean, we had real science, we had Newton, etc. So yeah, as Alex said, education was in the hands of Christians, so naturally that was the case. Right, okay, so it seems to be mainly this complexity argument, and there was an engineer, there was a designer, and look, as John Lennox said, we currently engineer wheat so that to prevent erosion. In a million years' time, there may be some archaeology that will dig up this wheat, and they'll find out, oh, it looks like this wheat's been engineered. And you know, it's an analogy with us finding ourselves, say, oh yeah, well, we must have been engineered, but we haven't got direct evidence of it, and these people in the future won't have direct evidence either about the engineered wheat that we engineered. No, wrong. In a million years' time, it will already be known that we genetically engineer plants. I mean, that's just, I mean, I can't believe that in a million years' time they won't have all the history, and they'll be engineering plants themselves. Why would they not realize that we engineered plants? They found out we engineered plants. But the problem is we haven't found out that God engineered nature. That's the whole point. That's what we're trying to find out. And you can't do it with an analogy like the watchmaker argument with something that we already know human beings engineer. Okay, so that's, I mean, look, there are more points. I've posted a link below if you want to go and watch the whole debate. That's fine. 1.5 hours. He did virtually all the talking. Alex didn't really challenge him that much, to be honest. But at the end of the day, Alex is still an atheist, and I think that he's kind of encouraging a lot of Christians to come onto his channel. It's part of his business. That's fair enough. I mean, hey, I wouldn't complain if I had 1 million Christians looking at my YouTube videos. I'd be delighted. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that, and look forward to your comments. Bye for now.